So in the other video we looked at how you can use Google Fonts with Axia. Let's say you've got an Adobe subscription and you want to use Adobe Fonts. You can use them, but there's a slightly different technique to it. So let's go to Adobe Fonts. I've just done a web search for it. We click on there and then it asks you to sign in. You do have to sign in there. I've signed in here already, so let's go in and have a look at our fonts. So quality fonts at your fingertips, that sounds awesome. Let's get started. So it takes you through to browsing for fonts first. By all means explore these other options here, but I'm just going to be searching here. We'll find a font that looks visually obviously different to Arial so that you can see it working. So we go through to serif. Perhaps actually let's go slab serif. And if I scroll down, we can see that there are fonts available to me that are definitely not Arial. So you can favorite them. But what we want to do is add them to a web project. So you've got the little greater than and less than symbol, which it stands for the HTML. So you click on that and go through. Now, one thing that is really important to note, you see how by default it's saying, yeah, let's download the regular italic, bold italic. You can actually download different fonts depending on your needs. So do you need it medium italic? Do you need black italic? And it shows you the different weights. Now make sure you only include the ones that you need for your project, because every font, every weight or different type of font that you include increases the download time. So you only want the ones that you need. So just be aware of that from your design. You can add it to an existing project, but we're going to create a new one. If you click on the down arrow there, you can see I've already got a heap of ones I've played with before. Let's create a new project, and I'm going to call this Axia Web Font. There we go. Excellent. And we've got our things that we're going to use there. So hang on a second. Okay, there we go. Sorry, because of my cropping off the screen, you couldn't see the create button, but down the bottom you'll see there's a cancel and a create button. So let's create. Awesome. Okay, now this gives us some very important information. We have the link that we need to use, and we need to use that in the same way that we did with the Google Fonts. But really importantly, you can see here the names that it's giving. So we've got Malaga here, and that's for OTCE bold italic, and we've got the font weight there. But really importantly, the narrow is Malaga -narrow. These are exactly what you need to call them in your web fonts for it to work. I mean, I've seen it work with not doing that. You know, you give it your own name, but that can be very hit and miss. This is the most reliable way of doing it. So let's pop into Axia so that we can have a look at how we then add these. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy this link here. So I'm going to go Command-C, copy, back to Axia. I've handily loaded some fonts. Now you could of course change these fonts from Arial to Malaga if you've got that loaded already, but I'm just going to do a bit of web fonts and font mapping to show you how this works just by using Arial. So if I go to Publish, Generate HTML Files, and then we go to Fonts. We want to add a font, and here it might be a bit difficult for you to read. We've got URL of CSS file. The grey font on a grey background does not help accessibility. Here we go. So I've added that in there. Now our font label needs to be the name that Adobe is calling it. So let's pop on back and find what they're calling it. So we're going to be calling it, let's say one of the things we want is Malaga, and we will pop back to Axia. And that is exactly what we'll call it. No capitals. If there are no capitals, just leave it exactly as it is. Now we want to do the font mappings. So add a mapping. We are using Arial here, and we're mapping that to Malaga. Now you can also map, for instance, bold to the font weight 700, because that's one of the fonts that we're using, and we'll just click done there. So let's add another font because we have the Malaga Narrow as well. So clicking through to Safari, I'm going to scroll down. Here we go, Malaga Narrow. And we'll just copy that. And the regular one is 400. I'm only going to show you two of them at the moment. So Malaga Narrow, we're using exactly the same URL because they're all part of the same style sheet. And just remember this Malaga Narrow, we're using it exactly, just to harp on about it, exactly how the font family is written in our little cheat sheet that is created by Adobe. Back to Axia. Okay, now we want to font map that one as well. So add a mapping. This time we're going to say Arial, and where it's regular, we want to map that to Malaga Narrow. So what it does is it looks for every instance on your design that is Arial bold, and on the website it'll make it Malaga 700. In Arial regular, it will change it to Malaga Narrow, and let's give it 400. Okie dokie. So I'm going to click done on that. You don't need to click on publish locally. You can just close it, and to see if it works, you hit preview. Let's have a look. And there we go. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this more easily. You can definitely see that that is not Arial. So what it's done is it's had a look at our design. It's seen, oh, you've used Arial, but according to your web fonts and your font mapping, you actually want Malaga for any time it's bold, and you want Malaga Narrow with a weight of 400, I think, from memory, anytime you've got Adobe Regular. So this is how you can use Adobe Fonts with Axia and have it working very reliably. One thing to note with Axia is, to the best of my knowledge, there's no way you can make a font stack, so you have no fallback fonts. And the problem with that is that if this breaks, if it doesn't work for you on your website, it does not get replaced by the default Arial. In my experience, your experience, might be different, but in my experience, it actually replaces with the default browser font of Times or Times New Roman. So that's a bit of a risk that you have to take, but hopefully if you follow these instructions, your Adobe font will work very reliably.